War and welcome back to Waaaghtaktiks. Today we're here with a very special guest. We're here to talk about all things Grotmas, with the detachments that are possibly to come, our predictions, our insight. Today we have not only knowledge but wisdom, and together we will unite and make great weird boy prediction on what is to come with the orcs in the upcoming detachment, different units that we maybe want from Dataslate touches, even orc models that we don't really like anymore that maybe should get changed. We're going to hit all things orky, so sit tight. This is going to be a good one, boys. But of course, let's start with our sponsors, the Baron of Dice. So thank you to Baron of Dice, as they help us do our paint competition, and it allows us to hook up everybody with that. So check them out in the 5% off in the description, because nobody likes taxes. So shout out to Baron of Dice. And welcome, Red Wunz Go Fasta. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome, welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Red Wunz Go Fasta, if anybody hasn't seen you.
Yeah, for all you gets that have been living under a rock, I am Old Big Mek. I have been in the Warhammer hobby since the mid-90s. I started playing in 2nd edition. Took a little bit of break in 6th and 7th, but other than those 2 editions, I've basically played every single edition, and orcs are my main thing. I run the YouTube channel called the Red Wunz Go Fasta. We focus on all things Warhammer, obviously very, very orky bent, but we're very much the hobby side. So if you want to learn about kit bashing, which models like are compatible with which other ones, how to like make characters on the cheap, things like that. We also talk about like different rules and things and just kind of how they go on the battlefield. But yeah, like that's what we do. That's what we're all about. And of course, coming on here and talking about all the orc awesomeness on Waaaghtaktiks, that's what we're about. So we are here to combine might, because you got your brutal, my Kunnin, put them together, unstoppable.
All right, so that means we're obviously going to talk about the new orc detachments. So far,
absolutely,
there's been a little bit of a sniffle because everybody's going a little bit crazy about how they feel a couple of the detachments are maybe looking a little bit too strong. You know, orcs, we don't look for those kind of rules. We're not really looking forward to having anything too strong necessarily, but we do want something kind of flavorful. So most of these predictions are going to be from practicality sense, from rules that actually already exist, but then also rules that possibly come from theoreticals. That's why there's going to be great, because we have game knowledge and we have wisdom of how things are to come. One thing that you said in your prediction videos is that you think Ufthak and the Bad Moons are going to come back. I'll let you start off with that since you already discussed that. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So when all of the new updates dropped for all of the data sheets, Ufthak ended up off on his own, which was really unusual. And I had this huge prediction video on how he wasn't going to be Legends anymore. Then they ended up throwing him into Legends on his data sheet. It even has his points on there and stuff. Everyone kept saying I was crazy. But then last week we got Lieutenant Titus. And what did we get? He's not in Legends. You can play him in the full meal deal, everything for Space Marines. And when you pull up his rules, the actual name of the file was Lieutenant Titus _Legends. So it is totally not unreasonable for Ufthak to get pulled out of Legends and turned into a full-blown war boss to be used at any time. The really, really cool thing about this is his model is not actually that limited of edition. It was a Black Library release, but the Black Library releases have been reprinted before and have never been totally locked down like the commemorative edition. So this is definitely something GW can do to help build sales for their Black Library books and bring people that are into the reading part of the hobby and the lore part of the hobby into the tabletop. So that's why I think we're going to see Ufthak make a comeback. Even if he's not part of this Grotmas data slate, we're going to get Ufthak for sure.
I think we actually will too. Now, as for the rule sense, obviously that would mean Bad Moons are back, baby. But GW, I think, has learned their lessons from Freebooters 9th edition. If you weren't here, you know, the orcs were given +1 a hit essentially on everything. Made them really bonkers in shooting, and you were just knocking everybody off the table with DACA. It was really toxic for the most part because it worked in indirect. Everybody hated it. So GW is very hesitant. That's why if you're wondering why Cult of Speed sucks, that's why it sucks. If you came back to 10th edition, it's because everybody got devastated and traumatized by Cult of Speed. I don't blame them. Therefore, what would a Bad Moons Daka bring without giving everybody +1 a hit? I have a few ideas here. One of them is I would like for you actually to make the distinction here, because I already know the number one argument from you, my own community. They go, hey, Waaaghtaktiks, Dread Mob already exists. Why would you have a Daka WAAAGH? What is the difference? I think me and you spoke about this. You should. I liked your answer. Let's go with you, since I always give mine around here.
It's a fundamental army difference, right?
Yes.
Dread Mob is all about walkers. So yeah, it's a shooting detachment, but you got to take cans, you got to take walkers, you got to take mech guns, you got to take a bunch of big mechs to make it work. If you want an old school Daka line, you need shooter boys, you need flash gits, you need ludas. None of those work in Dread Mob, really,
Well,
like a Bad Moons detachment would. So I could totally see a detachment that is completely different, because it would play completely different on the tabletop than the current Dread Mob one.
Yeah, for sure. And a couple ways it would do that, because like you said, people with Ludas were the exception to what you were saying that is good, but people forget the rerolls are inherent to their data sheet. So really there's only one, stratagem, and then there's the actual pressing the button that the Ludas can do, meaning that there's other ways they could possibly be buffed, right? Simply them still getting lethal sustains in another detachment could work. Or if people are giving, let's say somehow we get ignoring cover, we get +6 inches, maybe to certain weapons in their ranges or even further. We have the capability to have crossfire type of capabilities where multiple units focus down one, kind of like Gene Stealers would or Tyranids would, where Orks can actually compound their shooting with Bad Moons and shooting the same unit and bringing it down like a vehicle, but with actual infantry like flash kits. What are some other ways maybe you think that Bad Moons could be exceptional different?
Yeah, I could see a change, like bringing back truck boys. Truck boys weren't always just getting out and whacking everyone over the head. You also had drive-by DACA. That was a thing
Yeah,
for a lot of
that
8th
was.
edition, and so a 9th edition too. So throwing the little boys in the truck and actually having them be able to work without needing a stratagem to do it, like just as a natural part of the detachment, could be another way to bring that in there. I think that you would see, if this is the detachment we get, I think you would see a lot of emphasis on the flash gits and getting those guys to really put in some work and put down a solid gun line out of the flash gits.
So another way you could do that, right? Because the issue with Orks is, one, Ludas and flash kits are only -1 AP. So either we can choose a unit and make it ignore cover, not have the benefit of cover anymore, or somebody shoots at it and removes cover from it, or
Right.
we remain stationary. We count as remain stationary. Flash
And
kits
see,
have
and
heavy.
that would be my pick. I
Yeah.
think that we would see something more like that, because there's too many other strats that deal with cover and adding bonuses to cover, or always counting as cover even when you're not in cover, that
Mhm.
you end up with like this whole litany of wording that you need to do to make it work. But if you just made a super simple, hey, you can move and still count as stay stationary for these particular units in this detachment, it would give them enough of a buff to actually make some shooting worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. Or if you add additional AP with something like Crossfire, where like I think Gene Stealers and I think maybe Astra Militarum, for example, where they shoot the
Yep.
same target, suppressing fire or something, and they get additional AP, kind of offset the cover, doesn't make it a little too ridiculous. Like you said, it makes it very direct. These are ways that Bad Moons can actually still play the game. And thank you for backing up that there is a distinction. I understand you
Absolutely.
guys look at it and you're like, DACA is DACA. I appreciate that. DACA is DACA. But these are fundamentally different. Bad Moons are the boys with all the teeth, the flash gets, because they have the ability to purchase bigger guns, purchase better weapons. So the shooter boys should have better weapons. What if they go up to strength 5? What if somehow you give ranged weapons +1 strength and your burner boys are now strength 5? And because they have ranged weapons, they make it very distinct that it's just Bad Moons. Everybody has a better loot. So you can extend this to being pretty awesome. It could even be a certain within range capability. Now, we know that Blood Axes is possibly the other one. Before we talk about that, you mentioned one that I liked a lot. So what about
Yeah.
your off the wall detachment right now?
Yeah. So digging real deep back in the day, we had speed mobs that were all about getting up close and personal to get into combat. It's not like the speed mobs you have now. It's not where it's go fast and then shoot stuff. It's all about going fast and getting into combat. When I talked about truck boys, some of those original truck boys back in the day, that's what they did. You would take a unit of Ard boys, which were your choppa boys, but with 4-up armor on them instead of 6-up armor on them. You'd throw a brick of those guys in a truck. That truck would drive. You could disembark, and then you could get into combat all in one go. And that's what the speed mob was about. Now, how it would be extra fundamentally different is just like the Tyranid detachment the other day, where they made Tyranid warriors battle line, they could go back to the speed mobs of old and make bikers battle line again. That was something that you could do back in the day. You could take an all bike force, and your biker boys were actually troops, which nowadays is battle line. That gives you a couple of advantages. One, you get to take 6 squads of them instead of 3. So you could really flood the table with these fast moving units. The second thing that does for you is the battle line units are what you need for a lot of the actual missions. When you're talking about Pariah Nexus mission pack stuff, you have to have a battle line unit to do a lot of these secondary missions and hold a lot of these primary things. So if you give sticky objectives to your biker boys and you get to take 6 of them, now suddenly you have an army that is very, very mobile. It's going to play a lot more like a Drukhari army or something like that than the speed mobs that we have right now, where you kind of go fast, but you have to like pump the brakes so you can still shoot things. You don't want to get too close. No, this is the other way around. You want to get right up and close, personal in their face, and really get some smackdown going. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I actually really like that one. Now, there's a little crossover in rules that we got to point out because there's some guys that are ready to go. Actually, right? So right now in Cult of Speed, they do have faster than you, so it's an enhancement. But you're speaking as like an army detachment ability, just increasing our speed. It could be similar to maybe we get a little bit of a scout where our armies get to scout forward to make up the distance because we're going faster. It could be guys can auto advancing 6. You're just emphasizing that we become faster and we get melee enhancement buffs.
The emphasis would be on the fundamental army change. Moving the biker boys over to battle line would be a fundamental change. And then as far as the actual detachment itself goes, for your detachment wide rule, you could have it where you could advance and then get into close combat for the whole army. That would be, something that would be fundamentally different. And it would be like thematic and it would be competitive, but it wouldn't be broken. Getting hit by a war bike, squad is never going to be a fun day, but it's not completely bonkers either. Like it's something that you would normally face in other scenarios. So I think you could go, even without having to go any faster than they already do. I don't think you need any extra speed. I think it's more about incentivizing people to put the speed units on the table and then use those speed units to get into combat instead of go do drive-by shooting.
For sure. And I know also Cult of Speed does have the bikers can get +1 to wound guys. I know that one too, but there's other ways to make things good at combat that are going to be making these charges off that are fundamentally different. Like you said, changing them. For example, Storm Boys, we have Wicked Joe with 20 Waaaghtaktiks gifted memberships. Whoa! Whoa! Thank you very much for that. But he also makes a good point here that I personally felt at heart, which is I have 30 Storm Boys. I need that Zag Struck back. Right. So I don't know if we'll get Zag Struck back necessarily, but as you said, fundamentally changing Storm Boys, they already have advance and charge innately. They need combat buffs, like you're mentioning, to make them actually devastating. Because right now you're just kind of like, oh, a Storm Boy, and they smack in you. You're like, oh God, here, stop it. Right? They don't even do anything. Sometimes a vehicle runs over a 5-man. You're like, what just happened? So it's totally true that it could change fundamentally, and it's not reflecting Cult of Speed necessarily. It's kind of their parallel with Cult of Speed, where that's the DACA version, that's the buggies, maybe the cop does. This is looking to just make speed units that maybe want to punch a little more devastating. Even maybe buggies could adopt some of these to kind of offset the fact that they suck at shooting. So maybe
you could
you add buggies for better melee potential.
Yeah, your Boomdaka Snaz Wagons and your custom Bustas especially, those 2 units would do really well in a speed mob like this, where they're going to have some buffs to the combat. The Bustablasta's got all those Scorch exhausts on them.
Mhm.
can be super devastating in close combat. Boomdaka Snazwagon, same thing, can get in there and do some damage. So, yeah,
Well,
you could have a couple of the buggies. You're not going to take a Rucka Truck Squig buggy, but
no.
you're going to take your buggies that are more to get in there, and then all your bikers, and then your Death Killer War Trike.
Yeah, the Boomdaka Snazwagon has an aura of -1 to hit of 6 inches. So if that can get close combat buffs to get closer, that'd be dope. And then the
Absolutely.
Megatrack Scrapjet does mortal wounds already. So if it can get some buffs so it can more reliably punch or get more punches, that'd be cool too. So yeah, thank you with that also, Wicked Joe, because I really think that I want my Storm Boys to be awesome. Thank you, Devin Rogers, for the membership. Whoa!
Whoa!
Thank you guys very much. I love it. Very generous of you. Let's get some war bosses in chat for that for you gits. So that'd be awesome. And of course, yeah, you use kill rigs and different units for that. So that's the speed mob that we could possibly end up seeing on the table that I thought was pretty cool. Another one is, of course, what about being Kunnin, right? So what about blood axes, for example? I do have an actual example here of what I think that might look like. I told you a little about it. So let me pull it up real quick just because we talked about it a little bit. We do have a real detachment here. This would be the Alpha Legion called the Deceptors. Now, I didn't even think this was real. My cousin showed this to me and he's like, this is a real detachment that already exists. They're not meta necessarily, right? But they could show some rules that could be inherent to blood axes that reflect things that are possible, right? Because GW has been recycling some of these rules. They might recycle these guys, right? So one of them is you can give precision and additional AP. You can give lone op to additional character and stealth. You can end up getting a reactive move up to 6 inches. You can pile in charges essentially. So for each unit that makes a successful charge, you get +1 if you use this strat. So if 3 trucks make 3 charges, then the 4th unit to charge gets +3 to its charges. So you can run off with trucks and charge dumb things, and then your knob gets +3 to charges. And then they have re-rolling hits if you're below starting strength, and then re-rolling wounds if you're below half strength. So that's one that they could also have as well. And then a reject 12 inches bubble for one of your units in your opponent's reinforcement stage. So Grots could, a 20-man unit of Grots could screen out like your entire backfield for 1 CP of even 3-inch or 6-inch deep strikes, which Orks really don't like that. So that would be a cool rule that we could actually appreciate. And it gives, I think, up to 3 units get infiltrate as well. It could be, stealth. It could be scout, whatever it could be. But that could be a cool iteration of Blood Axe that already kind of exists. I have other things, but just starting off with that, what do you think we could see from a Blood Axe attachment?
We were talking about this beforehand. I'm not the biggest Blood Axe fan. They're kind of unorky, but the more you talk about how the strats would work and how the army would work, the more I fall in love with it. I mean, the idea of being more cunning than brutal and having some scout moves and doing some shenanigans like that, I think you could pull in some deep strike and some strategic reserves things as well that could really make that work nicely. And it definitely has source in the lore. It definitely has source in the army. I could see a lot of fun with Defcoptas in that as well. Back in the day in 8th, Defcoptas were nasty coming in the board later in the game doing deep strike things like that. So being able to pull those in and use that with some of these stratagems as well, I could really like that. I could see this Blood Axe thing being really cool.
I have a couple more theories here, but I also have theories for, let's say that it could either be Blood Axe or whatever. We don't have a name for this detachment. We have some rules that could cross overlap here. But another thing for Blood Axes, for example, is they obviously want to be cunning, right? And they represent guard. We've seen with the Adeptus Mechanicus that they've selected units. I think Dark Angels do that too and such. They select units and give them certain kind of buffs off the buff tree, right? So what if commandos start to take some sort of orders to where you can give orcs out of WAAAGH abilities? That'd be really cool for orc synergy if they don't restrict it too heavily. If you can give more advance in charge, if you can get additional reroll wound rolls of 1s or something cool where you pick units that you're like, oh, you get a buff that I never had access to before. Because orcs right now don't have a lot of cool overlapping buffs or synergies. There's not like a lot of like deep I don't know, overlapping just synergistic abilities, I guess,
Yeah,
between orc
the
abilities. It's
codex
really
is
just good.
very disjointed. None of the
Yeah.
data sheets really work that well with much of anything else. You get
Mhm.
a couple of good combos, a couple of
Yep,
1-2 things going in, but
yep,
nothing that really works with a bunch of other things. When you go and look at other codexes and how
yeah,
other armies work, and even Astra Militarum, even though they're on index, they mesh really, really
yeah,
well. They
mhm,
have an order system like that, and that order system cascades down the line through all of their units. But then those stratagems and those enhancements, they stack off of each other, and the units work off of each other. I mean, we talked earlier about how we could do that shooting down a unit thing. That's a guard thing where they get to pick a unit and get rid of the cover on it, or make their armor save worse
mhm,
by other units shooting it, right? So like
yep.
the way that the rules are written for other armies to work together is really cool, and something that's been lacking of the orcs in this edition, especially. So seeing a rule set like that, if it's blood axe or not, doesn't matter, but just to see a rule set for like
Yeah.
that in our data slate where it actually works together, and it encourages you to, like, hey, if you've got commandos in the backfield and they select this unit, then your guys that are up here up front, if they go after that unit, like, they're going to get a buff from it as well, and it encourages you to work your units together and to play smarter. I think those are good things.
It's something people are dying and asking for. The fact that we're literally just independent units running around trying to act as missiles all the time, and every kind of detachment gets a little bit too simplistic to the point that you're not even interested, because now if certain problems come up, you don't really have answers for it. That's why people look more towards Dread Mob now, because at least it has some answers to questions or problems that might appear in certain games. Other ones are like, can I bonk you the same way I bonk everything else? No, oops, I'm
Right,
dead.
yeah.
Yeah,
They're super one-dimensional, and I think we're on the same page on this, that Warhorde is kinda almost the best detachment, not because the detachment rule is any good, but because those enhancements are the only ones that, or the stratagem, sorry, are the only ones that actually work with more than one unit at a time, or can actually work together. And like I said, Dread Mob is kind of the only other one that at least the few units that the strats work on work a little bit. But yeah, everything else is so one dimensional that you don't have answers to anything, and there's no synergy to it. And it's like, okay, if I don't take the 6 units that this detachment says to take, there's no point in taking this detachment. So you might as well
Yeah,
take Warhorde. That way, at least your
exactly.
stratagems have a little bit of synergy and a little bit of multi-dimensionalness to them.
It doesn't feel good to, I would say, new or intermediate orc players. Only, well-developed, collections can thoroughly play multiple detachments and feel like I have enough of everything to play this detachment properly. That's not cool for entry level, and I don't like gatekeeping our faction. I think that's one of the reasons why I hardly ever seen orc players in real life. Sometimes we're already expensive to collect. We're already a lot of hobbying time. And, now you're adding this as another factor of it's not appealing where you're just like, oh, you need 3 of this or 2 of this and
Yeah,
all these
it,
different, and it's like, oh, for every detachment just to play it, and you need the specific ones. If you don't have these knobs, you get no abilities for your bully boys. No, like it's
right.
just like, what?
Yeah, it's 100% true. I mean, my collection is over 30 years old at this point. I've got over 7,500 points of orcs,
Mhm.
not including anything in Legends. That's just the things that you could take in 10th edition. It's
That's
over
awesome.
10,000 points of everything. But 7,500 points of orcs, I go and I look at these detachments and I go, I don't even have this stuff. Like, literally,
Oh,
I've been working my nuts off, getting a whole bunch of knob squads together that are min maxed on power claws, because I didn't have that before, because it was never a thing until now. So I absolutely feel that if a seasoned, long time, multiple edition collector has to, like, scramble to put together 1,000 points of a detachment, there's definitely something fundamentally wrong there.
there you go. And that's exactly how I feel about it too. Even though I'm excited, that's the one thing I'm looking for this detachment. Can it be played from the new beginner to intermediate to seasoned org player and collector, because everybody's kind of tired of these very stringent detachments. Even if I get something cool, if it has to be 30 commandos and 30x of only these couple things get these detachment, it's still gonna feel very samey
right?
to
Yeah.
what issue we're
Yeah, and
dealing with
that's
right now.
I agree with you 100% on that. I would much rather have rules that encourage you to have a well-balanced collection and have that collection work with each other than pigeonhole you into these single units and only those units. Like, being able to just mix and match and be like, okay, yeah, even if it's not the strongest version of it, if I can use these buffs on, say Ludas and Shooter Boys and Flash Kits and Burner Boys, right? Like, I'm going to be way more interested in playing because I might only own one or two of those units and not all four. But having those options mean that the two units I have and the two units you have, we both get to play with these rules instead of, oh man, I got lucky and I own the ones that they work and you don't. Right? Like, that's not cool.
I got lucky. It's true. It's true, dude. And even though we're excited for new detachments and orc players are very optimistic, that's what we're looking for. A detachment that can be played from all levels, that doesn't gatekeep people from just having all the correct quote unquote models to be playing with them. And just having synergy would feel really, really good. And it goes back to kind of like our initial point of this topic, at least for this first 30 minutes, is that's why we are both more leaning towards bad moons. You can get all of this straight up ability, just just passive abilities. Like if you get within range, you get ignore cover, +6 inches to your guns, and it could just be just passive, +1 strength, like a salamander's version of the detachment, for example. Your shooter boy guns go to strength 5, your burner boys go to strength 5. Bunch of different little thresholds reach. Maybe mech guns become strength 10 instead of strength 9 within 24 inches. So you actually consider they can pop something that's vehicle a little bit. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking. Our point is that it can be played in other ways and be universal for our orc codex, not just strict on certain keywords. Is that pretty much what we both agree on, hopefully?
Absolutely. One thing that I don't think is going to happen this detachment, but you brought it up and it makes me want to talk about it, especially for 11th edition. I would like to see us go the way that the Space Marines are going now, where they're getting rid of the whole Primaris and Firstborn are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see Beast Snaga and regular orcs go away from being two different things. Why can't I put Flash Kits on a kill rig? Why can't I put Beast Snaga boys in a battle wagon? They're all orcs. They're going to climb on whatever moves.
We'll
If
come
they
back
took
to this.
that away,
I think we should come back to this.
yeah, we would
A
do a
little
whole
later.
episode on that one.
This goes, yeah, this is gonna go. We might come back to the end of that because I have a lot to say. I'm not a Beast Snaga boy fan. We'll say that, right? We'll say I don't like the distinction, but I don't want to get too sidetracked. The last thing about this upcoming detachment, let's just make a little theory hammer of Ufthak's rules. Don't have to go too deep. You can go based off maybe the lore, maybe a little of what you would see. Should he be, a finesse kind of character, a super killy character? What kind of war boss would you like to see from Ufthak? I'll try to pull up his data sheet right now anyways, but what do you think?
What I want to see from Ufthak is a return to the old school rules for orcs where we were a little unpredictable, because Ufthak in the lore is very unpredictable. Sometimes he gets in a battle and he doesn't necessarily do the best job. Maybe he gets crunked a little bit. And sometimes he takes down a Gargan, right?
That's a
Like,
good way to say it.
so, for most of orc history, we've had these damage tables and these reaction charts that were very wild. The shock attack gun, for example, back in the day, there would be like, oh, you shot it and, kind of some normal shooting happened. Sometimes you'd shoot it and it would fizzle out. Sometimes you'd shoot it and you could take down a Titan with it because it would absolutely go bananas. Sometimes you'd shoot it and it would shoot backwards and it would suck the gun through the warp instead of the snotling, and the Big Mek ends up on the other side of the battlefield. I would love to see something like that with Ufthak, where he gets into combat, he calls the WAAAGH, whatever happens, and you've got like this D6 table of you don't know what it's going to be. On a 1, he kind of whiffs. On a 2 through 5, he does some cool stuff. But man, on a 6, if you hit a 6, he's taking down a Demon Prince. Like, straight up. I would love to see something like that. It would be super thematic on the tabletop, and then it wouldn't feel overpowered, because if you gave Ufthak the power that he really has in the lore when he's on it, he'd table Gaz. which is cool, but like they're not going to do that in the rules. So to give him the chance to do it, but not have it be 100% of the time, I think would be something that would be well loved by everyone.
That was a good way to put it. He does have a data sheet right now. I would say I do not love his data sheet capability as even deep strike potential. The only thing that's good for is ingress if he goes second. But in reality, orc trucks, because you can have so many and they're so cheap, they kind of act as like a little weird, really good deep strike because your guys can just pop out in places they shouldn't with huge bases like 40 mil flash kits. And his current rule, you said it's random, right? This one just feels like the dude randomly wrote it because it doesn't really make sense to me. He like re-rolls the hit roll and the wound roll against Titanic only, and then he only has 4 attacks, 5 on the wall, and then it's only strength 10. So what Titanic model is getting wounded on
I don't know.
So he's wounding
I
on
really don't know.
5s. He's
You
wounding
have
on
such a
5s.
hard time. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to need 6s to touch anything.
He's having horrible 5s at 5, but he's re-rolling. It sucks. So he's only at best, he's doing 10 damage if you're a super beast and roll all 6s to wound, devastating. That's just kind of random. Like he's not sure what he wants to do.
Yeah,
and
he's not even going to get something down into the first bracket. Like so even if he totally goes off and maxes, like that, it's nothing on a Titanic unit.
There'll be actually then he's leading Nobger boys who are also, horrible into both Titanic. So his doesn't really make sense. He could end up maybe leading some kind of mech units also. I like him, see him more in a support role if he doesn't become a beat stick. I love that the Snaz Hammer exists, dude. I'm a little annoyed that it's still like the strength of a Power Claw. Power Claw is strength 10 minus 2 damage.
Right.
Come on, dude. Snaz Hammer, like finally we get a different weapon than a Power Claw, and you can't give us like AP3 or something cool. It's just a little odd. I'd really love to see that go up. Like you said, he doesn't have to be game breaking for us to be cool. For me, if the weapon at least profile fits something that's kind of cool, and then his buff is something that we don't have in a supportive way, I could appreciate that. If it's for random, I think his randomness should be behind his shock rifle, like you said, more than his melee, because that has to be kind of reliable, right? We need something of a reliable or helpful outcome from his existence in our rules somewhat. It doesn't have to be broken or crazy. So I like if his melee and those kind of rules stayed cool, but for his shooting, I like if it was wild, right? Like if he tried,
yeah. How cool would it be if you roll a 6 on his shock rifle wound roll, and now instead of strength 8, you're strength 16.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Like that.
Or if you roll a 1, then you kill like D3 boys because they get destroyed by your shock rifle on accident.
Yeah,
like,
hazardous, something like that. Absolutely.
Like that. I mean, maybe D3 would hurt people too much, but 1 at least, kill 1 boy at least.
Yeah, 1 at least. Yeah, you could do something with it,
You get hazardous, but it goes on your boy and it kills a boy in your squad. It would be hilarious just for attempting, and you roll a 1.
Right.
We could have those rules a little bit. They don't have to be so breaking like a Killer Canyon in my example. So that's the last of what we hope for. At least the new detachment. We're at least 30 minutes in from talking about, from that. And then someone said, what about a warp zone mob? So what if it was like psychic, weird boy heavy? I don't know if they have enough weird boys for that. It would have to be all based off some kind of like giving people abilities, and your weird boys would have to do it. I don't know how else you could really have something like that.
I mean, I would love a weird knob to come back. The problem isn't so much the orcs at this point. It's 11th or 10th edition period. Psychic not having a phase anymore, and its psychic abilities being like just another gun, really kind of killed that, because weird mobs were a thing back in the day, and they did operate a lot like that. So like the jump, that's where that came from. You used to be able to do that to multiple units at a time. Your weird boy would be in the back, just going crazy out of the WAAAGH energy, and you'd be jumping units all over the place. So something like that would be really cool. But I think 10th is just too fundamentally broken on psychic stuff, which we see with Thousand Suns. Like that army is so just plain right now, and just not played and not used because of that loss of psychic. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see a weird boy knob or a weird mob.
Closest would be, like I said earlier, if we had some kind of battle shock detachment where we had to start taking battle shock, like forcing the opponents to take them. That'd be weak. Nobody was excited about that.
Yeah, who cares?
Nobody.
Battle shock.
So we'll move on from that. That's for the Grotmas. We had 30 minutes on that. If you guys want more than that, in the comments, say it right now live, and we'll talk about it at the end. If you have anything related for what you want, maybe you'll say something cool, and then we can comment on that. But the next topic that I want to discuss with Red Wunz would be okay, we can do the data slate after this one, but I still want to. I'm still too pumped. Let's talk about these gets the kill team Wreckas. So you gave me some news. Go ahead and give our boys, some lads, some news here.
Yeah. All right. This is breaking news. I literally saw this right before we went live. This is brand new information to the WAAAGH. The Wrecka boys sprue. I have seen them in totality. They absolutely, positively, 100% are the same build style and attachment areas as the Commandos and Beastnagga boys, also the Squighog boys. That means that they're not totally modular like the old boys, but they are not monopose. The arm sockets, you are going to have some arm sockets that are similar between the builds, not just in that mob, but also with the other sprues. And the head pieces attach the same way. So just like you could put commando heads on Beastnagga boys and vice versa with no modeling experience, you're going to be able to do the same thing with the Wrecka boys. So that means we are building a new style of boy that is interchangeable amongst all of these different model kits, which is extremely advantageous to us Ork players. Now, here's the really cool thing. That sprue, it's got 5 regular bodies on it. They are the new boy / Beastnagga boy size body. So a little bit bigger than your old school boys, 32 millimeter bases, really nicely done. All 5 of them have the option to be built as a Tankbusta, which means your rocket launcher or your, they got the tank hammer and the rocket pistols. But yeah, rocket launchers. There were 3 to 4 rocket launchers in there. And all 5 of them can be built as Wreckas. Wreckas all have the close combat weapons. That means if you're a Kunnin mech and you got yourself 5 extra bodies, you can slap those arms on, and that one box is going to give you a squad of Tankbustas and a squad of Wrecka crews. Now, the knob, I want to talk about the knob a little bit, though. He's big. He's big like the monopose knobs. Now, the monopose knobs are so big, they are war boss size. He is even on a 40 millimeter base like the current war boss. That dude has some heft. He has some chunk. He is thick. He also has multiple build options. So you're going to be able to do a lot with this kit. I am super excited about this kit.
You just got me excited about this kid, dude. Dang, that was an excellent job. That's why you got to check out Red Wunz Goes Faster for those kind of tactics, boys. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so, save yourself some teeth and give yourself some options. Get this box, get another box of boys. That way you can put the arms on there. And next thing you know, you are going to have both options to play with when you go to start playing your next game. I would recommend getting the Commandos kit to go with this. Again, the arm sockets, they are the same arm socket styles on them. So if you have a spare squad of commandos, those 5 bodies, you can make, the Wrecka crew out of them. It also gives you a different rocket launcher. So when you're doing your Tankbusta squad, if you wanted to take all rocket launches instead of having the tank hammer, you'd have that out of the commando kit.
Sweet. Okay, that's actually an awesome tip. I'm really pumped about that. Thanks a lot for that. Look at that. You guys heard it here first. So check out Red Wunz Go Fasta for all things hobby related, because we love to see that. And that's why we're really happy you came. So thank you for joining us today for this evening. Now, as for rules for the Wreckas, now they could actually become very important for Orks because we are suffering when it comes to dealing with very durable vehicles and monsters because reduction of damage exists, because feel no pains exist, because a bunch of different debuffs to shooting exist. For these guys to really come over the top with their shooting potential to offset all these defensive buffs that exist in the meta would make them borderline broken unless it was synergistic with the new detachment, or for some reason they had the mecha kill ability from Dread Mob and you can stack those shooting, but you're not gonna be able to do that. That doesn't make any sense.
I think you're gonna see similar to the Squighog boys and the Beast Snaggas that have the anti-monster
Yeah.
and anti-vehicle. I think you're going to see a similar type ability out of these guys, where instead of being, over the top or having all of these different buffs on them, they kind of make it this flat, easy, okay, 4 up to wound. When you're going up against the vehicles, that's going to give us the ability to get in there and put some wounds down on things. And then I think you're going to see more damage output out of them. So every hit that actually lands and wounds, we're actually going to be able to do more than 1 or 2 damage. And I think that's where you're going to get the usefulness out of these. Now, they did not drop the 40k rules for these yet, just kill team. I guarantee you it's going to be 2 different data sheets. Wrecka Krew is going to be a completely separate entry than Tankbustas. They're a completely different squad. So you're actually going to be able to take 3 Tankbustas and 3 Wrecka Krews.
Yes, absolutely. As for when discussing what they would need for anti, but that leads me to, can it synergize with the new detachment? Because our issue right now is lack of AP and the damage potential, right? So if you simply made them 4+, but you kept them at AP -2 in melee, that might help a bit. But there's still a lot of vehicles that have 2-up saves and then have Armor of Contempt, for example. And if it's shooting, there's cover everywhere. So it could overlap with either of the 2 detachments we talked about rules earlier, with those damage 3 rockets, because they're rockets. So rockets will probably retain the damage 3. So that offsets our crappy 2. But if we talked about those buffs we had earlier for either Bad Moons or even a Blood Axe type of synergy, these guys could end up getting pushed over the top, and that's what I meant by that. If you gave them a crossfire so they could be AP -3 or ignoring cover, then these guys could actually be cool in shooting, and they retain, like you said, maybe anti-vehicle 3+, because orcs don't shoot that well. And then maybe they still got +1 to hit against vehicles and monsters, for example, right? And then for their record potential, devastating crews would be fantastic, like a beast boss. So it's not just beast boss have them, but that could be a little borderline broken. So maybe only one guy does a small version of that, maybe like 2 attacks, 3 attacks, where it's anti-vehicle 4+, and then the other guys do other versions of -2 damage 3 in melee as well. Those would all be really cool ways to kind of, like you said, have these guys, but they do their job, but realize that this job is very critical to us, yet hard to attain with just replicating our basic data sheets and rules like we've been doing. We do need something to push us to AP -3, like Josh Hardaw here saying bring back the Meganauts, but that's a topic for when we talk about data slates. Yes, we're still going to talk about data slates, so bear with us, but we're not, so these guys would need AP -3 or something to offset what we suck at, which is killing high toughness things, killing stuff that can reduce damage a lot. In just in general, any kind of vehicle and monster. So
yeah, and I think we have the potential for it because there's new weapons in that box.
yep.
As you see, the guy down there in the middle and the bottom, he's got those new like kind of smash a fist things going on. You got the different style of tank hammer in the back, and then in the front, you've got your old school tank hammer that actually has the rocket on it. That's going to be a mortal wound maker right there. So there's definitely potential to get much different looking data sheets and abilities than we have traditionally had, just because they're all new. They're literally new.
Yep, that's what I was hoping for. A little bit of what we had. Remember, running in there and taking out Trajan Valorous with your hammer. That could be a minor baby version of the Beast Boss without having to tap into a Beast Boss. And then you still get the other melee potential from that unit. And then another different unit shoots fully. And what I really like is that the boss, which I think is cool, he has a rocket pistol and a hammer, a melee hammer. Now, is that detrimental to the shooting unit, right? I don't want a mixed loadout where
he's got options on the sprue. He's got options.
Okay, exactly. I don't necessarily want him to be like a spanner where he's completely out of range because he has a 12-inch pistol and everybody else can shoot but him. Maybe that's not as good unless his melee sick. But this is why I want hammers to have a different profile than claws and power claws. If you're gonna make him a new sculpt, and GW is getting a little accurate with the sculpts here and what they want to represent, let this hammer have additional AP. Look at the back of it; it has a pointy part, right? You could be AP there, and then just maybe less strength than a kill saw. That could be cool. So I don't know. I'd be excited for orcs to get those kind of things, and still love that they have the squigs, right? Still have the squigs. So I think that's pretty sick. Do you have anything left to say on the records? Because I think next we'll just talk a little bit about the Datasheet, and then we'll talk about maybe some models we want to see, and then the last topic we have.
Yeah, let's get into some models.
Let's get to what we're talking about Datasheet real quick first. We won't spend too much time here, but we do have to at least talk about, to keep in mind that with this Grotmas, list of detachments that are coming out, people are getting, they're, what is it called? Willies in a twist, we'll say. But keep in mind the Dataslate's coming out, so there's a chance GW will, contest some of these really potent, somewhat toxic borderline rules. Yet it could really change the meta as a whole if it addresses certain things that even maybe the orcs want to see, or some of our predators will have, or people that we predate on. So is there anything you want to see from Dataslate to start off? I'll let you get first on that, if you have anything you care about.
Yeah, this is where you're way more in tune with it than I am, as far as the little things that they can adjust and tweak. The big overarching thing that I want to say on Data Slate is that, remember that none of these data sheets are hitting the app and going to be official until January. So they're all going to be out and published first. Then they're going to go live to actually use, like, competitively. So GW is going to have a chance to fix all of them and balance everything. So I wouldn't get too worked up about any of them being over the top or maybe even not good enough. They're going to have a chance to even it all out.
I want to say this too, that I've seen. Ignoring modifiers on either any of our detachment rules or these Tankbustas would also help with some of our weaknesses as well, right? We don't want to see them having modifiers. I want to point that out. I read that and then I didn't add it up. But when it talks about for the Dataslate, like you said, sure. But I know there's things that we want to see that aren't just, I like this because it's meta. For example, when the WAAAGH being called, the hunts not necessarily being playable, cult of speed being ugly as can be. Now, they changed it just fundamentally because Pariah Nexus doesn't allow cult of speed to exist, because you're not going to assault and do actions and such. So that would need a huge oversight. So I think the hunts could possibly get one. If it comes to orc units in the Dataslate that I think you guys might want to look into, of course, Mega Nopsis will come down another 5. We would love to see them come back because they have our awesome strength 12, AP -3 that we need, and they need to be cheap enough to actually get some trades, use as bait, and still have other things on the list because Bully Boys are so stringent. Another thing is there's a chance, right? People just bringing it up just to talk about for fun, but what if they decided to nerf the 3-inch deep strike? Nobody really likes the fact that you get to ignore the hardest move of the game, phase of the game, right? The hardest phase of the game with 40k usually is the movement phase.
Absolutely.
The fact that you can ignore that and just pick up 3 or 4 units and then just put them anywhere, it's like, what are you even doing? We're not playing the game anymore. Not to mention that now they have 3-inch of that. So you really have to do something about that, in my opinion. I mean, have you've seen some pretty potent broken things probably in the past, and GW not really attend to right away. But how do you feel about this kind of rule? I mean, is there a place for it, or are people over exaggerating because you've seen past rules?
No, there is no place for it. Back in the day of 5th edition, is where deep strike and coming in out of reserves and things like that actually really started building. Before that, you could only do 1 unit, period. So you take a 2,000 point army, you could only bring 1 unit in off of reserves. It didn't matter, whatever, because it was a drop in the bucket, right? Because as you said, movement is the most important and has always been the most important. Positioning is everything in this game. Getting behind cover, getting out of range of guns, getting into range of charges, all of those things. That's what makes this game fundamentally different than playing Magic the Gathering, right? It's all about that 3D. It's all about that movement. It's all about how all of that interacts with each other. So back in 5th edition, when they started this, like, hey, you could take 25% of your army and put it in the strategic reserves and then bring it in on a table edge. Now, often back in the day, that table edge was your own table edge. So it wasn't very OP. And then they started giving certain armies the ability to go in wherever the heck they wanted, Dark Eldar being one of them. They were super nasty because now all of a sudden you've got multiple units coming in your, as the opponent, your own edge. They're literally behind you. man, it was way too overpowered. It was fundamentally breaking the game. It caused a lot of people to stop playing. They really got to stop playing with that kind of stuff. And I think that's the major problem with 10th edition is they keep doing these kind of big game breaking kind of dumb things and then having to walk it back really bad. We saw it with the Fate dice with Eldar, who are still on index. They were way overpowered for way too long with the way that worked. And I think we're seeing the same thing with this, being able to just pick up all these units, throw them back down wherever you want, ignore the movement phase, get up close and personal with things. They got to stop doing rules that ignore other rules. That's a really, really good. I know you just said we should have that, but it's a really bad look because, right, like the whole point, you know, in points, right? I'm paying the points for this unit because it's got these rules that do good things for me. If you can just ignore it, you have negated not only that rule, but the opportunity cost of me taking something else that wouldn't have affected because of that deletion of rules. So yeah, like I think they need to back away from all that stuff. I think they definitely have room for improvement here on making 10th edition both more fun to play and actually like make more sense and be more strategic and less just Magic the Gathering power combo.
And that's funny that you bring that up because one, I totally agree with that, right? You're saying, yeah, you just said you want to ignore rules. It's true because there's so many rules that are easy to have access to and overlapping that now the rule to ignore rules, ignoring modifiers is becoming a thing that is, you know, potent, like Necrons with their Silent King, for example, right? Because so many people have, I can do this, this, and this to myself. They're like, you do none of that. Just play the basics, right? And Orks want you to play the basics. And that's why we're calling for that, because we're like, man, now everybody gets reduced damage, feel no pain, armor of contempt, also getting cover, reactive stealth. You're like, can you chill, dude? Can you just tell me what you do? Now it's like, just ignore none of that so I could just play the game outright. That's why we're calling for that. This reminds me of when they even started introducing something like devastating wounds, for example, where ignoring invulns became a thing because people started to have 2-up invulns, 3-up invulns everywhere. You see army-wise 3-up invulns. And then people were like, can we just start ignoring invulns now? And then they started to bring up ignoring invulns everywhere. And then now we're sitting with devastating wounds. And then they're like, well, now we have to make things tougher because they can ignore invulns. And then you're like, well, things are too tough. So now we're going to give them lethal wounds so they can ignore wounds. And you're like, well, why am I ignoring my wounds? And then so it's true.
Yeah, and then you get feel no pain stacked on that. And now instead of a simple interaction of shoot, wound, armor save, you've got shoot, reroll the shoot, wound, reroll the wound, armor save, you know, reroll the armor save, feel no pain. You're just bloating the game for no reason.
It gets
That's
better.
why these games take 4 hours now instead of 40 minutes.
No, it gets better. I do all those things, and then you're like, well, I half your damage, and you're like, yeah, but I plus my damage, so now it's -1 +1, and then you have to roll the feel no pain anyways, and you're like, no, but I have a feel no pain, you can't kill me, you know. It's so stupid. I have damage reduction, so I ignore your 1 damage, and you're like, can you stop? Can I just ignore modifiers? I don't even want to play this anymore. That's why we're asking for ignore modifiers now, and you're right. This is a symptom of these rule bloating that it just sucks for us orc players because we want to play the fundamentals, like the movement phase, for example. And if you start ignoring the movement, you start ignoring certain rules and stuff, it just makes it not fun for us. We don't even care about necessarily the results. It's like we just want to be able to make contact and make things happen. Now it's like we don't want people to have rules. So that's Dataslate. How about that? Stop giving us rules that ignore other people rules. That's how I feel about Dataslate. Bring down, you know, the Necrons, bring down the, you know, the silliness that we're seeing that are slowly leaking out more right off the bat, nip it in the butt. The game was in a really good spot. And they decided to kind of add these detachments. Totally fine. We love fun things and we'll make the best of it because we're orcs. But it does give us more complexity and headaches when we were already in a pretty solid state finally for the first time. So no bad smoke here. I'm just saying let's hope GW jumps on it for a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
And these guys are saying Mega Mek, Pain Doc, Rigga Detachment, perhaps. What do you think? The Pain Boy Doc? You know, I missed that they had those characters on bikes like the Pain Boy. You know, for example, if it comes for like the Big Mek and Mega Armor, I don't think he's gonna get a detachment centered around him. You know, that is a little bit more about maybe bad wounds, for example, like we talked about. But yeah, I think there's not too much save for the Dataslate. Orcs don't need points necessarily to come down. We need rules points to, I mean, you know, rules to kind of get shifted and make sense. If you're gonna assist Squigs, for example, There's a point that you're making them just so cheap that they're just a great body with a feel no pain, and that's not what we're looking for. We already have a good amount of models. Let's get some rules that can overlap and be synergistic. So that's what we hope for, not only for the new detachment, but we're hoping people kind of, the data slate gets rid of these ignoring rules and crappy 3-inch rules and kind of hems things in, doesn't have these ridiculous kind of abilities anymore. A
Just
little bit.
fix when we can call the WAAAGH. That just fix
That's
that.
the biggest one.
Fix that.
That's the biggest one. That's the biggest one, because you have this one-time army-wide ability that other armies don't have just once per game. They can just constantly cycle rules and pick different units to have them. It's fine. We can make a devastating ability from this. But again, we're talking about the bar to entry, intermediate to beginner players. Mistiming the wall, your game's over. You just set up all this time to do your game, and then because the weirdness of the wall, you mistime it and you're dead. And it's like, come on, dude, the game's already complicated enough. Let me at least get my one-time ability at a time that makes sense, that's not overly predictable. I have to predict in 30 minutes after all his activations, I will need this wall with what's remaining because mathematically I should survive. Therefore, I can do this counterpunch. It's like, stop. That's a bar to entry just to play 40K.
Right. Yeah. And it's not even like timing it within the game. I mean, as hard as that is, because you got to call it at the beginning of your opponent's command phase, right? And all that jazz.
No, the beginning of the
But
turn of the battle round.
Projecting what you're going to do, right? If I'm the person going second and now I got to call the WAAAGH during your turn, you get a whole turn to be like, oh man, I'm backing away so that you can't charge me. Like, nobody else has to project what their army is doing like that. It just doesn't make any sense.
So for us, that's the easiest one. Get rid of 3-inch or 6-inch deep strike. 3-inch deep strike. Excuse me, nobody loves that. Make the rules that are coming out a little broken, not so ugly. That way we can interact as orc players. It could be fun in ways we don't have to win all the outcomes or have them in our favor, but make it so we can have some interactions here. And then we'll just make the best of what it is. So I think Orcs are in a fine spot when it comes to point-wise. We just have some weird rules between the hunts, our WAAAGH, certain units not being able to get access to different detachments, and our really big lack of AP -2. I mean, AP -3, and our only abundance of AP -1. So I think that's solid about the data slate. Now, just what I want to talk about for fun here. There's a topic of models that need updates. Now, I want to go first since in topics that I favor, I want to go first. Like, the ones we favor, I go second when I go favor. Let's do this. I hate Mega Knobs. Okay. I just hate Mega Knobs. Like, get out of here. Get out of here with this lunchbox boy looking booty at I'm sick of this, right? I don't like Mega Knobs. I think they totally need a revamp, looking like a lunchbox out here. Not imposing, not distinguishable by boys, other than the fact that they look like they're boxed up because your kid stole a bunch of Amazon boxes and stacked them on himself, dude. So yeah, right. Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly how I imagine a small child running around. So for you, what do you think about these models that are dated that maybe could get touched up and loved like the Tankbustas did?
Yeah. So obviously I got a whole list here of things.
You see how he licked his finger right there, guys? He was waiting for this. You see this?
Yeah, all night, man. This is what it's about. So I agree completely on Mega Knobs. I don't have as much of a problem with it as you because half of my Mega Knobs are metal, and if I put them in a sock, I can use them to beat my opponent to death.
Okay,
but the old school metal ones were way more dynamic looking than the plastic ones. So if you hate the plastic Mega Knobs and you don't want to give GW, what is it, like $80 now for a squad of those things? Go hunt down the old. It's ridiculous. $70 for 3 plastic. Get out of here.
Fight me.
The old school metal ones are super reasonable on eBay. Go pick yourself up some. They look better. So that's your top tip on Mega Knobs. But I agree because the new War Boss in Mega Armor looks amazing. And especially when you put him with the new plastic Mega Knobs, they look like garbage. All right. Here's what we have for models. Here's what we have for models. Okay. First of all, we have 2 big needs. These are absolute needs. This is a barrier to entry for all players. It's a stupid business decision by GW. They need these to come out now. Number 1, new War Boss. You can't buy a war boss. The war boss that you do buy is locked into a mono build as far as loadout goes. We are the only army in all of 40K that is like that. You go pick up a Space Marine captain, he's got 47 different options on him. You pick up an Imperial Guard commander, he's got 13 different pistols. You go pick up literally anybody else, and they have multiple close combat weapons, multiple shooting weapons, multiple loadout options available for every single leader. All of ours are completely locked in monopose. The war boss in mega armor is now locked in with that giant axe. You can't even take a power claw on him anymore. They got rid of war bosses on bikes and all that kind of cool stuff. So you're locked into this mono build war boss that nobody likes and nobody can buy. Now we know that a new war boss has to be coming because Ufthak comes on a 50mm base and came with a basic war boss data sheet in the box. I guarantee you a new war boss is coming. I guarantee you it's going to be on 50. It needs to be a multi-kit where you have the ability to put different weapons on him. He could take a power claw. He could take a huge choppa. You could take something really different. Fun fact, the knob kit that you can buy right now where everything is counts as a claw, those aren't claws. The drill was a totally different weapon, had high AP. The funky looking hammer thingy was something totally different. It had high strength, you know. So we've had different weapons in the past beyond your basic choppa, big choppa, power claw. It'd be cool to see that stuff come back. Right?
One more
All right,
thing.
so that's number one.
One more
Number
thing. Can I say
two,
something
and I
about
don't
the war
think
boss?
what's that? Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Another thing, orcs do not have an epic named character war boss, quote unquote captain, right? You brought up all the Space Marine variants of captains. We don't have a just basic war boss with a name. That's why we felt like Ufthak, Bad Moons might actually come into play. We get our first war boss epic character. That's another just appeal to why we hope it makes sense to me. How do we have, you know, you can say Gaz, but he's the supreme commander. That's like saying Gilliman's a captain, right? It's just,
right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have anything in between.
yes. So that's not even, oh, someone just said it before I said it. I seen you coming, boy. So no, it's exactly like I said. We need a just basic war boss on foot, just a normal captain boy, just getting stuck in there as an epic character. That's where, you know, he would come into play, in my opinion, and why he still has a place, unlike other generic, you know, let's say guardsman characters where they have a booty load of these name characters already everywhere throughout. But you can continue with the other points. I just wanted to add that for the epic.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. The other thing we're gonna need is new boys. Here's the thing.
We have new boys.
Regular boys.
We have regular boys, don't we?
No, man. You take that monopose kit and you get out of here. That kit is garbage. Absolute hot garbage. Okay,
What?
think about this.
You don't want
You're
two
a brand
random
new
guns?
player. You're a brand new player. You walk into the Games Workshop store and you go, man, these orc guys are cool. I'm going to buy those. And you look at two identical kits that are both called Orc Boys.
Yeah.
And one's got 11 and costs 10 less dollars than the one that has 10. Make that make sense, right? It's completely ridiculous. They need to take both kits. I love the old boy kits. I love them. I have over 150 of them. They're not going anywhere ever. But they need to take that kit, put it in the retirement home. They need to take the monopose kit and bury it in the ground, never to be seen again. And they need to release a new boys kit. And that new boys kit should be done in the same style as the Commandos, the Beast Snaggas, the Squighog boys, and now the Wrecka boys, where they are a not monopose kit, where you have the ability to move the arms around, move the heads around, move certain armor panels around, and have multiple loadouts so that you can build out of your box a full squad of Choppa boys with sluggas or a full squad of Shooter boys. There's no more mixed loadout baloney. If they did that, they would sell like hot cakes, absolute hot cakes. Those two kits are absolute needs. Now, moving on from that.
Let me say something about the boys.
Go for it.
If they decide to ignore all your words of wisdom, because that makes total sense, I have no dispute with that. But I'm going to play devil's avocado. What if they say, shut up, we hate you, Red Wunz. We're going to make you take some DACA and put two or three shooter boys into the rules. That'd be horrific for us, by the way. I would hate that, right? Because there is that possibility. GW doesn't always play fair. They might just say, we gave you a new boys kit, Red Wunz Go Faster. we don't like that you have a marketing scheme than us. We're still going to keep doing this. So therefore, what if they just implement that we must take shoot up boys within our boys list? But that's a conversation for a different day. I just wanted to add that to your comment. Continue.
Yeah. Wait, we shouldn't go there. All right. The next thing is
we shouldn't go there.
we just shouldn't go there. There's 2 squads that I think should be next. These are things that should be updated. They don't necessarily need to, like the boys in the War Boss, but they should be. Number 1, this is a hot take. Is a hot take. The truck. I'm going to give you multiple reasons why the truck needs to be replaced. Yeah, truck. Look at the truck, like physically put it on the board with all of its accoutrements on it, and measure its silhouette, and then go measure everything else. That sucker is as big as a Land Raider. When it comes to actual physical presence on the board, if you built the truck how you were supposed to, with the loading ramps, with the ball, with the front thing, it is gigantic. It is taller than a Land Raider. It is wider than a battle wagon. It is almost as long as a battle wagon. It's only an inch shorter than a battle wagon. Like, really think about that. When you put that model on the table and you look at it next to all the new Ork buggies and all of the other vehicles in the game, it is in the wrong scale. It is way too big. It takes up way too much space. That's one reason. The other reason is the truck kit, as much as I love it being a scale model builder for my background, it is the only full detail kit that GW makes. So when have you built a truck? You've built a couple of trucks, right?
Yeah, I have 5. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the drive shaft that's in the bottom, all the differentials, the radiator, the fan for the radiator, there's none of that jazz in any other kit. How did you feel building all of that?
That's true.
Right?
I never really considered
Right?
that. That is one of the best parts. It has an axle. It has everything that you kind of want. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's got full
You're cooking.
suspension underneath, the whole 9 yards. You could go to town making that thing, like an IPMS model and go into, win a trophy there.
That's
If they
hilarious.
made a truck kit that was much more simplified, as much as I hate simplified kits, but just you don't need all the bottom stuff. I mean, half of our kits don't even have a bottom on them because who the heck flips them over? But if they made a more simplified truck kit, but the other thing they could do with it is if they make a new truck kit and it's a better scale and it's a little simpler, they can make it a little bit more modular, like the stupid Tyranid guys that are miners. I always forget their name. The Gene Stealer Colts.
Oh, sorry.
Their truck, the whole nose of it is modular, right? And so you can move the different pieces of it around, and it's got different build options. So when you build 3 of them, all 3 of them look completely different out of the box. No like cutting, splicing needed. They could do that with the new Ork truck and make it where you've got a couple of different like grills for it, and maybe like a different get up for the driver and gunner to like how the one now you could switch spaces. You could have it where like one's like in a turret or one is more like just standing there shooting. You can make the truck look a little different, because right now, as cool as the truck kit is, there really isn't a way to differentiate it out of the box. You have to do some serious kit bashing in order to make each truck look different. And Orks, everything should look different all the time. You shouldn't have 6 identical ones. So I say we need a truck.
Also, that gives 2 options if you bring that, right? Like you said, it gives options for how it looks. That's just for aesthetics. What if we just said for rules introduction, one, it could bring back old-fashioned big tracks. That way they're not legend and people who had them still have them. You can make them accessibly bigger. Or you can call them a looted truck. That way somebody could make an actual looted vehicle and have rules. But you also have a kit that looks like it's looted with different bits, so they could be modular too. So GW could implement that 2 different ways at least, so it makes sense in rules for them to also implement a new truck kit instead of going out of their way for this one truck kit. So that still makes sense. I love that one too. Do you have any other list, model?
Yeah. So the other thing that I think they should do, and this is if they do the new boys, they should also do the Ludus Burnus kit. And this only hit my list 30 minutes ago when I saw the Wrecka boy sprues, and then it just all clicked. It went, we always said if they wouldn't replace it, and if they did, it would have to be 2 new kits and all this other jazz. They can do it just like the Tankbustas / Wrecka boys. They can keep Ludas and Burnas in the same box as they have been since the dawn of time, and you can make it like a 6-man squad, like that squad is, where you've got these 5 Scorches and maybe a heavy Scorcher that's something new for the knob to take. And then on the Luda's side, you can have, the custom Mega Blasta to go with the Def Guns and things like that. Maybe a couple of rocket launches in there. But you can make a kit that is like that kit that has the same kind of modular attachment point where those arms can interchange, where those heads can interchange. And now you're building a new ecosystem of orkdom. So just like the old school boys were in the same ecosystem as the war bikers and the old world / old school Warhammer boys, like they were all that ball and socket style. Now you can move everything to this new style ecosystem where a lot of these arms can interchange, where all of the heads can interchange, where you could do different things with the models and have them be semi-modular to one another. I think that would be a really cool kit.
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome as well. Don't think I have too much different. One thing I would say is if we oversaturated with the amount of 6-man squads, it could become an issue for how just the game's designed now, where you attach a leader, and then if you have, for example, if you have 5 Ludas and a spanner, and then you add them both to make a max unit, it's 12, so you can't attach a character to it, so then it can't be in a vehicle. Our trucks are super vital and helpful, so not offsetting that potential would be cool. I think Tankbustas are at least in a good spot. Not that I'm disagreeing with your thing, by the way. I'm not. I think it's a great idea. I think it could work for Burner Boy specifically too. But why I like the Wreckers again, like we spoke about, is for SWAT teams, for example. So why I like that there's 6 is you can have a knob and a leader war boss for 5 dudes, 6 dudes, and then you put a wrecker crew in there. So I do like having some units that are 6. So I don't think overall what you were saying is wrong by any means. I think updating
you
kits
could do it 5, you could do it 6, you could do it 10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back in the day, our boys squads, the box that you bought had 16 in it. I really don't like the new 40K where everything is 5 or 10. It used to be all of the armies had different amounts of things in their units. But yeah, 5-man, 6-man, 10-man, however you want to do it. I just think they should get a new kit.
Yeah, I'm saying I think I have no contention with that. I do hope that they continue to have like weird numbers, like you said, of 6s, or even maybe like 8s or 8s for example. I think there's ACDCs or different units that have like 8 models in their unit, for example. That'd be cool too. Do you have a different unit?
All right. So, and now my last section are this is what happens if Games Workshop puts me in the control room and I start mashing buttons.
Cool.
These are the 2 kits that would come out after that. All right. First of all, Captain Badrock would come back. You'd have a brand new Captain Badrock. He'd be back in the Codex. Captain would be leading the boys again. I think that character is too iconic from all of the editions past and is too important to the lore right now to just disappear like that. We need a captain. The other one I would do is Warlord Nazdrag. That guy hasn't had a model in 3-4 editions, but he had the longest lore of anybody. His lore is older than Gazgul's by 3 editions. Nazdrag was the OG.
Okay, I love that. I love that. I personally would like Zagstruck to come back. I just like the model, so I don't know if I want a new one, right? Don't know if I want a new one of him. I really like how his models goes, but this is, we're talking about new models. I'll just say introduce a new boy. Why doesn't Tuska Demon Slayer become like some kind of canon or some kind of model? So much opportunity there for GW to give that guy love. And I think for the most basic fundamentals of anybody who's new to Orks, you look at Tuska and you're like, that's why I picked this faction.
Tuska would be rad. I would love a Tuska model.
Love a Tuska. But can we get a shout out to Murder Mouth for 5 Waaaghtaktiks gifted memberships? Whoa! And we're coming out with a new tier list and everything. And also check us out because we're doing Fix My List. So thank you very much to that. Thank you for that. Make sure you guys check that as you can submit your list if you guys have need some help with some events and then have some gets learned from your changes. And then we have Wapo here saying, I custom kit bash my Mega Knobs from Blood Bowl.
That is absolutely the way to go. They make some of the sickest looking Mega Knobs. In fact, Blood Bowl is one of your best bets for like base bodies to use for all of your different kit bashes. Their boys are awesome. Even their grots are awesome. Like if you want to make a squad of super grots to go with Crazy Beard Guy, That's where you should go, is hit up the Blood Bowl mom.
For Zach Shrek. That is a good idea too. And I think they're always slept on. People just forget Blood Bowl even exists, but they do have pretty sick models because
Yeah,
I hate Mega Nubs. I use some brutes from AOS, and then some of the other ones are
those are
prints.
sick
I
too.
never asked you about this. How do you feel about prints? Now I'll give you my point, and then you can give me yours, right? So I play a lot. I collect a bunch of different, so I can't have everything, but I try to. And like we talked about with money, it's a mixture of kit bashing. So I have a unit of Mega Knobs that are GW official, 6 models, straight up. Then I have a unit that are brutes that I converted from AOS into models. And then I have a printed version that I have over here by me as well, right? So it's almost like I use all of them for just like a variety's sake. But I don't believe in like saturating necessarily my whole army with it. Where do you overall stand on how you like, modeling
Yeah.
as a
So
hobbyist?
yeah, so I have a 3D printer. Mine's an FDM. It's not a resin, but I've got a real good buddy that's got a resin one. I've got a number of prints in my collection. My main problem with prints is most of them are sized super wrong. They are often way too big, especially for orcs. And while that can look cool on your shelf, it honestly looks kind of garbage on the tabletop. I mean, certain units like Meganob should be a little bigger, but
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot that are just. I got some commandos in where the basic commando guy himself was like bigger than a war boss, and they're just really kind of dopey looking, and so I don't like that. Also, resin as a material is really difficult. First of all, it's highly toxic. You never want to sand resin without wearing a respirator. Resin dust will absolutely get in there and can literally kill you. It also, like, if you drop it by accident or like, something gets jostled while you're going to the game store, it shatters. It actually explodes. So, it could be this really difficult material. And then as a modeler, because my big thing, like my deep dive is that model building, is that kit bashing. Okay, like I hit print and got exactly what I wanted. There was no originality in there for me to cut and splice and do. Now, all that being said, I don't have any problem with them being on the tabletop. If I show up to a game and somebody's got printed stuff in their army, as long as I can tell what it is, I'm cool with it.
Mhm.
I've played against entirely printed armies. Again, as long as I can tell what it is, I'm totally cool with it.
Mhm.
It's going to be up to each individual person on what they want. What I like to see is if you are going to print stuff, make sure that it's identifiable to somebody that's not in the army, right? Like you and I, we're going to be able to tell an orc unit and be able to, oh yeah, that's exactly what this guy is. This is the loadout, right? But somebody that's not an orc player, right? They still need to be able to do that. So if I'm printing somebody and he's supposed to have a power claw, it needs to be a claw, right? It can't be some crazy contraption thing. If I print a guy and he's supposed to be, a boy squad, they should be the size of war bosses, right? That's going to get confusing and be like, whoa, like this squad looks really gnarly. What are those dudes? No, you got to stick with it. As long as you stick with it, then it's cool beans and good to go. But yeah, that's where I am on printing.
Yeah, I would say that it was a good point about the shattering, right? Some people, you really take your time to get this stuff painted, and if it shatters, you'll be heartbroken. But you can rescale, right? So the scaling part can matter, but these are just more, bars to entry and things that matter. So I just wanted to hear your point. I have nothing contest with you on that at all. I just like to hear from a extremely, well crafted hobbyist and longtime player what they think about that compared to like someone like me or, maybe people who just play a lot, right? So
Right.
it's all good
I
that we
think
have.
the thing that needs to be said about printing is that it's a whole hobby unto itself,
Yep.
which is really cool if you want to get into it. But like there needs to be an acknowledgement. It is an entire hobby, especially with resin printing. You need a computer with the software to do it. You need the ability to get in there and resize the files to get the scaling correct. Often you're dealing with support issues and getting supports fixed. You need to have the printers. You need to have the curing station. You need to have the cleaners. You need to have it is a whole hobby on itself. My buddy that does it, that's really big into it. He's got like 3 or 4 resin printers, a couple of FDM printers, but that's his thing is like he just prints stuff
Mhm.
and it's really cool. But like that's not. I don't want to have a printing hobby. I want to have a modeling and painting hobby, maybe a little bit of a wargaming hobby, right? So you can't just say, oh, everybody should just print their armies. Man, just like everybody can't just paint their armies, right? Not everybody can print their armies.
It's true. As I picked up printing during COVID, kind of a little during COVID. So I had a nice good time to get used to it and everything. But once I started setting up for the channel in particular, I run out of like areas for ventilation, like we talked about the toxicity of it. So you're right. People who pick it up end up picking it up as almost a supplemental, really strong hobby to, you know, keep their Warhammer thing going. And I have friends like that too. So I'm totally on board with it and everything. But that's why I stopped printing personally. But I still like it. I have a bunch of printed stuff. I printed a whole Fabius Bile army after I read his audio book, listened to his three book series. Then I was like, that's it. I want a Fabius Bile army. So I'm down with printing. I think that there's a lot of different creativity to people that maybe can't kit bash, like you said, it can't paint. Well, some people aren't good at kit bashing, right? So
Right, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
they rather
There's
print
absolutely room
cool
for it in the hobby,
pieces.
for sure.
So I think it's fine. But last, just because I think that was all for the models, right? And I don't want to keep you
Yep.
too long. But last, but not least, I think you wanted to talk about also what does fitness matter in 40K as enthusiasts and as people who are now in modern society with our technology and our understanding of the importance of it. How does that, you know, become applicable and important to Warhammer players? You know, and I think orc players should pay attention, not just because of what we care about orcs, not just because how orcs look, right, but because other reasons. So what do you think? I'll let you start off with that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So physical health is incredibly important in all aspects of our lives, right? We all know that. Most of us have day jobs where we sit around a computer all the time, right? We're not exactly very active. And then this hobby isn't very active, right? You're sitting down to build, you're sitting down to paint, you're like playing a game, you might be standing up, but I mean, you're not really doing much physical activity, right? It's not like, you know, you're playing disc golf or anything like that, right? There's not a lot of physicality to it. And so gamers, for better or for worse, right, we have this kind of stigma about being not very fit, but it's totally not true, and it can give you an advantage to be fit. We all know there is a connection between mental health and physical health, right? So the better you are physically, the better you are mentally. This game is a highly mental game. There is so much going on. Everything you're doing with building your army list, everything you're doing with your setup, everything you're doing with your movement, remembering all of your rules and interactions, remembering everything going on with primaries and secondaries and everything going on with a mission, right? That takes a ton of mental energy. The more fit you are physically, the more better your brain is able to concentrate on those high level things because it's not putting over a bunch of processing power to keeping your body working because you're sitting there wheezing and sweating or you're super hungry, right? All of those things matter. So making sure you hit the gym, making sure you stay physically active when you go to actually play a game, you are going to have more capacity for the mental state to do what you need to do to win the game and be smart and be up on it than somebody that's not physically active.
Now I'll say, why does this matter to orc players in particular, like I started with, right? I'm not trying to get you guys to get some big old biceps and tricks, you know, flex your triceps on me and us act like the dudes from Full Metal Alchemist when we link up and we're flexing on each other with our shirts off. That is not what I'm looking for from you guys. That is not what I'm trying to push you towards. Neither is Red Wunz Go Faster. This is actually because we think it's beneficial as an orc player. If you're new to orcs, or maybe, like I said, intermediate, where you haven't run a full-on green tide, I promise a full-on green tide list will check your body endurance and your somewhat fitness level. If you run it to a 5-round GT, you will feel repercussions from running a green tide in those events. If you do, I see someone mention Mr. Steven Box, right? You know, Box from Vanguard Tactics, for example, he's a very fit dude, and there's a correlation I've noticed, not always, but you can see a kind of pattern recognition here, is that a lot of the time, really high level Warhammer players are also somewhat fit, or at least, you know, not, you know, in a duress, we would say, or in a bad condition. A lot of them are moderately well off, and that's because it does take, like you said, mental clarity, mental consistency. People that mess up a lot, I think, when you go to events is your food. They tend to not eat, or they eat the wrong foods like candies and junk foods. I think for the most part, people should become more aware of nutritional value in foods, learn the difference between how much energy is in a carb to a protein, its availability to you, and how long it becomes available to you. and the difference between what it does to you if you get carb loaded and get sugar, all these different things that you can learn from basic fitness stuff or health stuff that isn't us trying to tell you to be the next Ronnie Coleman. I don't care for any of that. I don't want you to look like a UFC fighter. That's not what we're looking for here, because we're all just dudes. This is because as orc players, you'll see that moving models around consistently from table to table, doing a bunch of different events, actually becomes impactful on your body. When I talk to guys who do 5-round events and they fall off, sometimes round 4 and 5, or even that game 3, the round 3 of day 1, it's usually from fatigue. Or in the morning, they don't have a proper morning routine and they lose their game because they weren't mentally sharp anymore in the morning, which that sometimes comes with the fitness application. Now, for what I mean, and you can tell me what you mean, because I know you did like a marathon or mini marathon like recently. What I'm talking about for fitness for Warhammer people, right? Because I don't need you to show me your bench. What we're talking about is mobility and endurance. Mobility is something where can I touch my toes? Can I lean over the table? Can I do squats? Do I have good shoulder mobility? And my posture a little bit. These are things we can work out for help us as a whole as orc players. And then for endurance, just being on our feet. If you go on long walks, if you bike, those are things that can assist you as orc players. And then eating consistently as well. As for you, what did you do recently? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think we could do an entire episode just on this, honestly. I mean, as you know, I went to the Tacoma Open Grand Tournament this year. I only went for 1 day or 2 days, or no, 1 day. I went for 1 day, but the event itself is 3 days long. And you want to talk about standing on your feet for 10 to 12 to even 14 hours if you're in the shadow round in a day.
Woo!
How well do you think you're going to do mentally playing this game, having stood that long 1 day, let alone 2 days, let alone into the third day, right? There is absolutely a correlation between, again, we're not out here trying to look like Schwarzenegger saying, you got to be like some super high level thing. We're talking about basic health and fitness, right? If you take care of your body, you take care of yourself, you take care of your physical fitness, not just like in the moment, but like having that consistent ability. When you go to do those things, you're going to have the endurance to do it where you're not hurting, where you're not like, oh, my back, right? And yeah, like you were saying, like the mobility to lean over the table. If I'm moving 100 models around and I've got to do that for 4 games, 3 days, this is crazy, right? You got a lot going on. That event happened to be on like the 6th or 7th floor of a hotel too. Like there's a lot of steps up and down, right? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about taking care of yourself and being healthy. And yeah, that the nutrition is an absolutely huge part. Again, I think we could do a whole episode just on the nutrition.
I took a green tide, like a true tide, to an RTT after not playing tide since 8th edition like that. And my hamstrings were killing me. I'm not that tall, but I'm 6'1", and the tables were a little low. And my boy, those hamstrings were killing me leaning over that middle of the table to get proper measurements to go and tag things and such, right? I'm holding that long bend. And I felt that. I felt that the next day. I'm not super dead fit anymore, but I'm also not horribly fit either. So trust me, when you're playing these events and you want to go to a GT, go for walks, learn a little bit about nutrition, learn a little, just prepare your body, do some squats. You'll feel much better. On top of all the regular, advice like wearing the proper shoes and stuff like that. Is there anything else you want to say particular on fitness? I know I have it on our Discord and we're going to focus more on that too, but do you have anything on that? Because I seen someone said, what is it? Is that, do you tell me where you were at on that? Or anything else you have left to say on that?
Yeah. So, um, uh, the physical fitness part, right? Like it's different for everybody, and don't compare yourself to other people. It's all about yourself and your own journey. You mentioned I did like a little mini marathon. I did a dry triathlon. I go to Orange Theory. It's a fitness chain thing. I'm a disabled veteran. I've got massive injuries. I basically fell out of a helicopter and pancaked onto a ship. Um, I'm lucky to have any kind of mobility at all with what I've been through. So my fitness journey is going to look very different from somebody else's, and so it's not about judging people. It's not about like, oh, I'm bigger or more swole or whatever. It's not that at all. It's learn your body, right? Do you even WAAAGH, bro?
Yeah.
Learn your
WAAAGH, bro.
body. Like, and just take care of it. Because the more you take care of yourself, again, the less energy you're going to have to put into mental energy, physical energy in maintaining your own body, the more energy you are going to be able to put into playing the game and defeating your opponent. They are absolutely intertwined. Back when I did play competitively, which was in fourth and fifth edition, I won the Ard Boys tournament in 2006, which was 18 years ago, that was up here in the Pacific Northwest. And one of the major reasons why I was actually able to do that, my opponent in the finals was just not a person of physical fitness, and he was totally winded. He kept
Oh,
forgetting things. And I mean, I'm one of those players where I'm like, oh, hey man, like, doesn't your unit do that? Or like, if something comes up and you're like, oh no, let's roll that back, or like, yeah, you can absolutely still do that kind of thing, right? But you could tell. And for me, that was the big light bulb moment. Cause I mean, at that point in time, I was like, in my early 20s where you can eat, 20,000 calories a day and it didn't matter. And, now that I'm in my 40s, it doesn't work like that, So definitely like just being cognizant of that and like taking care of your body, taking care of yourself, and realizing that it's not like, we're not saying go out there and run marathons and do all these crazy things, but take care of yourself and you'll realize you will see your gameplay improve just off of getting your physical fitness in shape.
for sure. And that's funny because that's the point I gave, and you gave an anecdote as well since older editions that sometimes people fall off in those final rounds of a day, and that's where you gain that advantage. Don't be that guy that people get to gain advantage on you because you fatigued out in the game. Now, someone didn't send this in, and I should have got to them sooner, but I was pumped up. I'm sorry. We love you. Omnisized Sphinx. So Catfish Jr. He said, have you ever thought of doing starter lists of 1K? I think he means 1.5K, 2K for people getting into orcs. Whoa! I will say that I actually do have videos on that. And I think you have them for collecting armies, I believe, and getting started, right?
Yeah. Mine's all about getting there with your collecting quick. But yeah, it would be fun. We could start doing some collab list writing and throw it up
Oh,
on our
shoot.
discords on different options for people in the different detachments.
That sounds like a great idea. You might have started something new, Sphinx Omnisaya. That way it can get a mixture of what's rules wise and what's efficient with collection wise from Red Wunz, and it makes sense for the ultimate start guide for like 1K. That could be interesting. Love
That
that. That
could be
was
really
a
interesting.
goated comments right there. And it was a $10 super chat. So thank you very, very much. And then I think that was most of our topics we wanted to talk. We got exactly to the 1 hour and 30-minute mark. So is there anything you feel like saying or adding on? We've been going pretty good into the comments, so I don't think we've missed anything since
No, they've
then.
been fired tonight. And oh, I do see someone down there. Butch was asking, "Is my username Sergeant Tellion on Taktiks?" Yes, it is. That's my Grots account. You guys all know I got 4 Grots. All of them have variously built and painted Warhammer stuff. 3 of them are still super duper into it. But Beskrat, he's got like 3,500 points of Ultramarines now that he's done, and like 1,500 points of Death Guard. Surgeon Teleon is his favorite character. That's his account, and I just get to steal it every once in a while and play Tacticus with him. So yeah, it's all about it. And yeah, I see people about the shirt, the Red Squig shirts. That's on my site. That's my thing. You gotta is all your nutrition. Make sure you slam a Red Squig every time because it gives you the
Just
wall.
contradicted yourself out here. No, I was kidding. No, that's a great shirt, dude. I love that shirt. Yeah. So it seems like we have everything figured out today. This ended up being a great idea. We should do it again sometime out here as well.
Absolutely, I'm in.
So of course, if you guys haven't already, check out Red Wunz Go Fasta because there's no reason why you shouldn't be subscribed to both of us as we have all things
Absolutely.
covered Orky between both of us at this point, guys. So this is what the Great WAAAGH has always needed, as there was no place for us to truly end up shining. So here we are. The power of the Great WAAAGH has commenced. So rise or
It's just like
shine.
having Gork and Mork, baby. You got to have us both.
Exactly. You got to have them both. I'll say at the end, you got me to it. Good. Great minds think alike. So regardless of rise or shine or doom or gloom with these Grotmas detachments, just remember that orcs don't get nice things sometimes, but we make all things nice. So don't be dismayed. Don't be saddened. Regardless of what comes, you can always come to both of us to find inspiration in your Great WAAAGH. Is there anything left you want to say, Red Wunz Go Fasta?
The same way I close everything. Are you ready, man?
Go ahead.
One on!
Whoa!